What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/PettyRevenge. This story's called Don't Challenge My Work Ethic. I will use that same work ethic to make you regret it. Long-time lurker, first-time posting here. I apologize for typos and errors. I'm on mobile. Also sorry, this is a bit long. Female law student here. My university organizes this major moot court competition, which is part of an international competition. We organize the rounds for all national level contestants, and then the qualifying teams go to the international rounds. It's one of the most esteemed competitions of the world, so the stakes are generally pretty high. I was selected to be the coordinator for the national rounds because I have worked with the organizing team before, and I have a reputation for being absolutely thorough in my work and never leaving room for errors or loopholes. One thing I realized when I took charge was that things have always been done with a bit of a lax attitude. So I revamped the whole structure. I made sure we had proper rules of procedure in place, and all instructions were communicated to the teams beforehand, so there was never any scope of doubt on our end, and no team could accuse us of foul play because our university also participates in the competition every year. Due to Brovid, we had to cancel the physical rounds where the teams would argue before the judges and only accept memorial submissions, where each team sends in their written arguments in a prescribed format for each party to the case. The memorials are judged on content, but there are penalties for not adhering to the format. The top scoring teams would go for the international rounds. Since it was just memorial submissions now, there was a higher burden on us to ensure that they were properly checked. And I did exactly that. One of our rules is regarding zero plagiarism, and I had sent the plagiarism guidelines to all the teams in advance, which was also very detailed. We use Turnitin portal for plagiarism checks, so we have a similarity index where certain things wouldn't be counted as plagiarism: name of the competition, facts of the case, citations, things like that. But we made sure to define what plagiarism is, lifting arguments from sources and passing them off as your own without citing them, and the penalty for plagiarism is disqualification. We had also internally decided amongst the organizing team that we wouldn't disqualify any team because we recognize the amount of hard work that goes into drafting memorials, especially in the middle of a pandemic when most people don't have access to university libraries. This one team had almost 80% plagiarism in all their memorials, which was way above the acceptable limit that was covered by our similarity index. I sent them their Turnitin reports, expecting a typical groveling apology with a "please don't disqualify us," which I would graciously accept. However, this team instead decided to send us an email full of accusations. They claimed that we weren't doing our jobs properly and that we are relying on softwares when memorial checking requires human intervention, and there was laxity in our work. They went on and on about how we are dumb to not realize that the things that are showing up plagiarized are all the things I mentioned above as part of the similarity index. The 80% was apart from all these things. They did not acknowledge that. They cried foul play, and they warned us to not throw around serious accusations lightly. Where they messed up was in claiming that I hadn't done my due diligence and threatening me. What they didn't know is that I had personally gone over every single memorial submitted to us, which was close to 100, to ensure that no team tried to dupe us into thinking their memorials were original. As a student, I know exactly all the ways to beat Turnitin. One of the ways is by replacing every fifth word in the paragraph you've copied, which is what the team had done. I went over their memorials, all 6 of them, again. I cross-checked them with the original sources and highlighted all the paragraphs, sentences, even the citations that were copied, along with highlighting the text in the original source material. This included all the paragraphs where they had replaced the 5th word. In the end, their entire memorials showed up as plagiarized. I wrote back to them, attached the highlighted memorials and the highlighted sources documents. I also color coordinated the highlighted text and attached a key so they would be reminded of which part of their memorial was copied from which source. I wrote that they'll find that there is no laxity in our work, and with some human intervention, we can always tell when someone has tried to dupe the software. I added that my initial plan was to let them off with a heavy penalty, but that if they did not wish to acknowledge their transgressions, I would have to disqualify them and inform their university authorities, which would have very serious consequences. I got a reply a little later with a humble apology, and stating that they will accept whatever penalty we would want to impose and would like to avoid disqualification if possible. Nothing made me happier than seeing that email. There's a whole other joy to using the proper mechanisms to put someone in their place. Edit. We didn't disqualify them for several reasons. Primarily, yes, because of Brovid issues, but also because of the type of work that they plagiarized. It's a bit hard to explain without going into full detail, but basically, the kind of sources they had plagiarized from fell lower on the plagiarism spectrum, you could say, with the worst being maybe copying someone else's memorial. It doesn't make much sense because plagiarism is plagiarism, but we had received those standards from the international organizers, so we sort of had to stick to them. Disqualifying a team is a huge decision that we have to confirm with the internal organizers, and they also wanted us to let them off with a penalty. We did inform their university mooting society about the plagiarism and the fact that they got a penalty instead of a disqualification. But the sad part is that plagiarism isn't really seen as that big of a deal in my country outside of academic papers, and is actually really prevalent in mooting culture over here, so even the university didn't really do anything about it. Also, I don't support plagiarism myself, so I will not be publicly sharing any of the hacks for beating Turnitin. I mentioned the fifth word thing because it's actually not foolproof, and 8 out of 10 times Turnitin ends up catching it too. Wow, I never actually thought to try to beat Turnitin, probably because I don't actually mind writing essays. In fact, I kind of enjoy them because it's fun to make them entertaining to read. You sneak humor in whenever you can, and I like to think they appreciate it. But anyway, good on you for, being willing to accept an apology as opposed to just disqualifying them right away. I can't talk, sorry. This story's called Don't Be Mean to Old Ladies. My friend and I were in Tesco food shopping. Or Tesco food shopping. Is that the full name? I don't know. As we turned into an aisle, there was a man with his trolley stretched across the aisle, blocking it, and an elderly lady asking him politely to move. He ignored her, then snapped, "You could wait," at her. She simply turned around and went back down the aisle away from him. As we shopped, we saw this same interaction a couple more times. Now, we don't know the details of how it started, but this man was deliberately seeking the old lady out and blocking her way. As we turned into the biscuit aisle, about 2/3 of the way down was the man, with his trolley behind him, engrossed in the biscuits. As we approached, I looked at my friend and gently pushed my trolley forward and in front of her. She immediately gripped the trolley handle, and I walked up to his trolley, gripped the handle, and we were off. We didn't rush, got to the end of the aisle, and turned into another aisle. We took his trolley, very full, to the far corner of the store and left it. When we reached the checkout, we told the cashier we had seen an abandoned trolley in the far corner. Didn't want good food wasted or going off. I just wish I could have seen his face when he turned around with his packet of biscuits to find his trolley gone. Ha, it was pretty good. That guy was acting immature as hell. Don't do that to people when they're just trying to shop. This story's called My Brother Always Uses My Shoes. Showed up to his practice with no shoes on. I had mixed feelings when I did this revenge, but I don't regret it. Happened over 15 years ago, and I was 15 and my brother was 17. My brother always uses my things without asking and always tries to deny it and would be too stubborn to admit it. I use his things so he gets equally mad, but the difference was I'm a little bigger than him, so what he wears wears doesn't fit me and limits the things that I can borrow. So the only size that's the same is shoes. We both play basketball and I bought myself $150 Jordan sneakers. And of course, he always uses them without my permission and I always see unfamiliar scuffs and all that. So my brother has a terrible habit of being late and rushes out of the house. So one day, I was doing yard work and I saw him rush to his car. And of course, I saw my sneakers in his hands and he placed them in the trunk. Mind you, he didn't realize I was watching him the whole time. He then realized he forgot something in the house, so he ran back and I quickly ran back to his car, popped the trunk and took my sneakers back, then hid. I saw him running back out and left. Then, later, he came home really upset and said that he lost his chance at being the starter in our high school basketball team because he didn't have his sneakers. His coach made him run laps and other types of crazy workouts. I gave him that smug look and he never owned up that he took it and realized it was gone. He only said that he forgot his sneakers. I honestly felt bad he lost the chance, but it was really satisfying. No, at that point, it's 100% his fault. As long as you've said something multiple times, can you not take my sneakers? Can you not take them? They're expensive, they're nice. And if he did that, that's his own problem. This story's called, I Gave a Karen a Tub of My Urine. You mean Seattle's official beverage? A few years ago, I was an events manager in a popular Latin American-themed cocktail bar. So I've had more than my fair share of Karen interactions. This one takes the taco. Karen was a nightmare from the beginning. Rude, inflexible, and a general pain in the butt. She was planning her 40th birthday, and nothing I planned or suggested was ever good enough. But I worked hard and put something together that she was eventually happy with. Roll on the party, and oh boy, this woman was in full-on Karen mode. She hated the place she'd been put, hated how we decorated, there wasn't enough food, blah blah blah. She made 2 of the waiting staff cry and was so awful that the manager told me to take over as I dealt with her before. Thanks. The rest of the evening went well. She got good and drunk, and when I said goodbye as I left, she gave me a big hug and said thank you. I thought I'd nailed it. Nope. The next day, I receive an email from Karen formally complaining about everything and saying how I'd lied to her, she wanted her money back and compensation, etc, etc, etc. I had to grit my teeth and respond, but ended up having to escalate to my wonderful area manager as I was so annoyed. Roll on a year and I'm in a different job. I fall ill with a UTI, which I ignored until it became a hideous kidney infection. My then boyfriend takes me to the walk-in doctors, but I'm in so much pain that I get given an appointment for the next morning so I can go home and sleep. The next morning, I show up to my appointment in agony and get called into the appointment room. To my utter joy, the nurse who is assessing me is none other than Karen. If she recognized me, she hit it well. She went through all the questions, then asked me to give a urine sample. I took the tub to the bathroom to fill it up. Being a female, it's not easy to aim, so the outside of the tub got nice and soggy with my infected urine. The pleasure I had passing her a damp tub of my piss made me feel better than even the antibiotics did, and it brings a smile to my face even now. Later on, you get an email from that Karen asking for the recipe of the delicious chicken soup that was on the outside of that tub. She's desperate. She can't stop thinking about it. The secret is culture. Lots and lots of culture. This one's called, I Got Owned by My 7th Grade Music Teacher. As a teen, I was the bad kid in school that always lipped off to the teachers and had a huge chip on my shoulder. I wish I could go back and treat people differently, but I can't. In 7th grade, I was really into skateboarding, smoking cigarettes, skipping class with my friends, etc. When I did go to class, I was disruptive at best. My music teacher, old Mrs. Griner, had tried everything to get me to just shut up and leave her class alone. Meetings with parents, detentions, extra homework, she tried it all. Or so I thought. Every day in between classes, there would be announcements on the loudspeaker. What's for lunch, sporting events coming up, academic achievements, whatever. On this day, the assistant principal was listing the 7th grade students of the month for different categories: math, science, critical issues, and the student of the month for social studies is my name. I froze in the hallway. Sure, I was just hearing things. Then my friends start finding me in the hallways, just roasting me for being such a good boy, teacher's pet, etc. I went to music class that day, and with the biggest turd-eating grin on her face, Mrs. Griner had the whole class stand up and give me a round of applause for being such a great student in her class. I don't believe I've ever been more embarrassed in my life. Even at 12, I knew what she was doing and that she had just completely owned me. I behaved the rest of the year in her class, and I did like to think that taught me a lesson. That's a cute story. Sort of plays in my head like a 90s movie sort of thing. Giving lip. Come on. You're not fooling anybody, Charles, class of 1987. This story's called Job Accused Me of Lying, So I Got Revenge. When I was 17 to 18 years old, I got my first retail job. I worked at a children's store that does ear piercings. I'm sure you all know which one. I started when I was 17, and shortly after turning 18, I was given a key holder position. I was thrown into the position with practically no instruction and absolutely no training. I did my best, even though I made mistakes, and I was actually doing fairly well. Time passes, I get back from a sleepover, and my mother informs me that while I was gone, my grandfather had passed away. Now, I worked just 2 hours after I got the news, so I went in still struggling not to cry my eyes out at any second. The first thing I see is the store manager standing there, looking annoyed. She takes me over to a bench out in the middle of the mall and sits with me, and starts telling me about all the things I'm doing wrong. All things I hadn't been trained on. While I mostly just blankly stared at her and tried not to cry. I wasn't taking any of the information in at all. I was just too upset. Eventually she noticed and asked what was wrong, and I broke down and started sobbing and told her. I then asked if I could go home, as I didn't think I could work efficiently with this news. She told me absolutely not, and she left, leaving me completely alone in the store. Now, for context, the store sold these stuffed animals called Beanie Boos. They also had giant versions that were about $40 to $50 a piece, I think. It's been years since I worked there, but anyway, some lady walked in and decided to buy 4 of those, and was ready to pay when I told her about a store close by that sold them for a cheaper price. She thanked me and left, having not bought them. So there was my revenge for being rude and uncaring about his death. Then, shortly after, I found out from a friend and fellow keyholder that they had not only accused me of stealing a few dollar items, which I had not done, but they also had accused me of lying about my grandfather's death to get out of trouble. So, in a fit of fury, I called up the manager from before, told her I quit, shut the store down 2 hours early, and went home. Probably lost them about $500 in total sales that day, and proud of it. I know it's not much in the grand scheme of things, they make millions, but it made me feel better. I now have a picture of my grandfather hanging where I used to hang my store keys. Yeah, that manager was a freaking jerk. In my opinion, you should always give the benefit of the doubt to someone at least once, especially when it's an employee, and you can clearly tell something is off with them. There are exceptions to that rule, obviously, because people can and will take advantage of any leniency you might have, but I feel like it's worth giving most people at least one shot. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.